So a little bit about Amadeus Consulting first. We're a custom technology solution provider, and what that means is when people can't buy or build their software, they come to us and we build it for them. Mobile is a big part of our business. We've been doing mobile for a long time. I like to say we're pre-iPhone with mobile, and it's hard for people to imagine the world before iPhones, but it did exist. Initially, what we did is we used PDAs, cell phones, and things like that to bring down costs of proprietary equipment and use commodity-based software and hardware. And we hooked up lasers and differential GPSs and things like that to the mobile devices. What people don't realize is until recently, when you went into an Apple store, you were using a Windows CE device to buy your Apple products. So there's been a lot of Windows products and other mobile products pre-iPhone used in commerce around mobile for a long time. We're a top-ranked mobile developer in our region, and we've built hundreds of apps. So in preparing for this conference, and we've heard a lot of technical details about how the banking system works and how processors work, but for the general consumer, they don't see the picture like that. They fall into four general categories. So first of all, the first category at the top here is they've purchased nothing before on a mobile device. And a large percentage of people fall into this category where they're just not comfortable purchasing via mobile device. The second category, which people don't think about a lot as mobile commerce, but it is when you buy books, you buy music, you do in-app purchases, movies, and this is actually where most people who use mobile devices are today. They are doing these sort of things, and these are the sort of apps that we're helping people design and build today. Now, there's a big gap between level 2 and level 3, and level 3 is when a brand builds their own app that you can conduct commerce with them. The best example of this would be Starbucks. And a lot of these schemes right now are basically gift cards that have been automated to the mobile device. The fourth level, which is everybody's been talking about today, is the mobile wallet. And the mobile wallet is a true replacement for the wallet in your pocket today, where you can use one wallet to purchase from a bunch of different retailers. Now, unlike some of the other speakers, I actually believe this is all coming very quickly, and we're going to end up with a majority of people at level 4 very fast, 2 or 3 years. There's some things in the way, though. Clearly, there are some barriers. But before I talk about these barriers, what I want to caution everybody to do, which I believe is very dangerous, is to use today's technology constraints to predict tomorrow's future technology. It just doesn't work that way. If you look at companies like Google, and you would have said, hey, all you have to do is put up 2 million servers and figure out the search thing and you'll be in business, nobody would have funded that company. Nobody would have believed it. If you looked at Amazon and said, how are you going to possibly digitize all these books? What are people going to read them on their laptops? That doesn't make any sense. And then they came out with the Kindle. So company after company after company has broken through what these theoretical barriers are and moved past them. So the first one is security. I believe it's not that people are worried about security. What they're worried about is somebody has their back. My example of how insecure credit cards are, and I think this is pretty comical, is not the waitstaff that takes it from you at the restaurant, because in general, they just put that in their pocket and nobody can see it. My example is when the bartender takes your credit card, face size out, clips it to the mirror 4 feet away from the bar, along with 20 other credit cards. And that happens all the time in restaurants all across the United States. So people aren't that concerned about security. They're concerned that you have them covered and you're going to deal with the security. Micropayment infrastructure in the U.S., it's not very robust. It exists, but it's nowhere near the same level, for example, that a VeriSign is. It's just not at that level. Additionally, there are a lot of people in the traditional banking model that have their fingers in the pot, and therefore it's hard when the transaction cost gets very low for everybody to get their cut because there's just not that much money in terms of the total dollar amount. RFID and NFC. So we've heard a lot up to this day about how hard this is going to be for the phones to be NFC enabled, and I just don't buy that. And the reason is people get rid of their cell phones all the time. People get new cell phones every 6 months, every 9 months, on the outside when their contract is over 2 years. And cell phones have gone from being free to costing hundreds of dollars, and the market's tolerated that cost. So the last cell phone, we buy a lot of cell phones because we test on a lot of cell phones. The last cell phone I purchased was $650 for a cell phone. So a couple dollar part that's going to be added into a $650 footprint of cost is nothing. That's going to happen. So that's not really a barrier of technology. That's just a barrier of a little bit of time until people cycle their phones out. I predict next year this time we won't be talking about how hard this is for this to be in phones because it will just be in all the phones at that point in time. Nobody's really talked about this yet, testing. We test a lot of mobile apps, and what I'll tell you right now is it's actually technically impossible to test on all the platforms that mobile exists on. So take Android. There's 200 hardware platforms that Android runs on now. You cannot even go to the store and buy half of those phones anymore. You just can't do it. So unless you're buying them used or secondhand or you purchase them right when they came out, the vendors don't have programs to support buying the phones. So how do you handle testing, especially if there's an error in your system? People may think that your system's insecure or there's something wrong with the payment and then they won't use it. So testing is a big deal. And I'm going to talk later how to address some of this. Comfort level. People aren't comfortable yet with the concept of mobile wallet, but people are adopting technology very rapidly. And so they purchase online, they're purchasing from their Kindles, they're purchasing from other places. It won't be long before they become comfortable with using a mobile wallet. Smartphones. Smartphones are not required to do a mobile wallet. But in the US, because of security and because of how we've been brought up with the smartphone, I think this is a barrier because less than half the people currently have a smartphone in the US who have phones. It's only about 44% penetration at the moment. The biggest barrier that's going to be in place is there's a lot of money to be made, so the people who control any part of the food chain or the cycle are going to block anything but their app from getting to you. And this is a little bit dicey how they're doing this now, but if you look in the book space, Amazon on the Kindle blocked the Nook from downloading books to the Kindle. Now, if you're a computer guy, you can get around that, but the average person trying to get a book from Barnes & Noble cannot do it from the Kindle because Amazon at multiple layers blocks that. This is already happening in the mobile wallet space, so this is going to be a big deterrent. Retail infrastructures. Retailers don't want to pay for anything. We've talked about that. They're not going to pay for anything. But the reason why I don't believe this is that big of a barrier, because there's other examples in technology where big companies have overcome this. So let's say, for example, you want everybody to read a book. You have to get a book reader, an e-book reader in their hands. And how could you do that for under $500? An iPad costs $500 to $700. Amazon figured out how to do it. They subsidized the hardware by giving it away basically at cost or below cost to get people on it. Don't underestimate Google spending a couple $100s per retailer to get them on board with their device. That's not beyond the realm of comprehension. Google put in $100 million into a fiber network in a city just to see what would happen as an experiment. You can buy a lot of card readers for $100 million. So it's not beyond the big players' capabilities to put this infrastructure in place if they so choose to. And finally, consumer confusion. Mobile apps aren't designed very well today. Consumers are going to be very disorientated about how this works. It's technology. And we need to do a better job of making the technology easy to understand so people can consume it. So why am I so sure that this is going to happen here in the US? Because it's happened other places already. It's happened in Japan. There's other countries you can take your mobile phone up, point it at the pop machine, and get a soda out. It's not even a big deal. They've had it for a long time. Other vendors in the US are starting to make headway. Starbucks, even though their mobile wallet is simply basically an automated gift card, they've done 26 million transactions already. And so this is possible. Now you look at the next list of players that are going to enter into the space, phone companies, Amazon, Google, PayPal. Trust me, they're going to sort out whatever perceived technical problems may exist, and they're going to push through these pretty fast. So let's get back to the basics here. Only 44% penetration of smartphones, not required, but I think this is going to be important given the security concern. The trickiest part about mobile for companies trying to build a mobile strategy is, unlike other parts of their technology, where they've had a whole decade to pick, are they Linux or are they Windows? Are they Java or are they C#? How does firewalls work? What brand of computers do they buy? Do they buy Dell? When they enter into mobile, that's all gone. They have nothing to lean on. They have to start from scratch. And this is very hard for a lot of companies, and that's why it's taking them so long to get mobile apps out. We develop mobile apps on Amadeus. We can develop really great mobile apps in 3 months. 3 months is a long time to build a mobile app. You can build 4 mobile apps in a year. You don't even have to be right. You can start out today, have a mobile app 3 months from now. 3 months later, have a brand new mobile app. It's that simple. So why is it taking so long for the vendors to get into this? Because they don't have a strategy. It has nothing to do with technology. They don't know what to leverage because this is all new to them. Now, when I looked at these stats, I said there is no way mobile is going to do close to, almost over $500 billion in a couple years. But what everybody has to realize is that e-commerce took a whole decade or so to get to where it is. They had to build out all that infrastructure. There was nothing. When we first started building e-commerce sites, you couldn't ship stuff, you couldn't interface with the credit card providers, all that was low-level code, it was very complex. Today, it's just a simple line of code or two to do very complex functions. That infrastructure is in place. So what's at stake is everything else in the physical world. E-commerce is only mostly in the digital world, and everything else is up for grabs. And that's why that number is so large, because that is only a small fraction of the actual commerce that's being conducted in the actual physical world. So we've helped companies build these mobile strategies around payment, around how they get out, how they get their brand out. And a couple themes have come up. The first theme is you have to start simple and stay simple. This is not a desktop app. The biggest mistake is to take your website and try to jam it into a mobile phone, or to take your desktop application and try to jam it into a mobile phone. There are a ton of constraints on a mobile phone. Screen size, performance, battery life. You can't act that way. So the vendors who do this best, and a lot of people here flew in for this conference, think about what you're doing when you're trying to fly. You're trying to get a flight, trying to check in, get through security, and maybe pick a seat. That's all you need in a mobile app for flying. And if you look at the airline carriers, they've done a pretty good job at that. Now, purchasing from the App Store. Android didn't start this way. They created a very convoluted and complicated application to purchase, and they are trying to simplify it, and they are not there yet. On the way out here, I was trying to upgrade something on my phone. You didn't know what to click on. You didn't know how it was going to work. I wasn't quite sure about the taxes, how that was going to work. And then at the end of the day, it didn't actually work. It was broken. And it was probably just my version of the phone or my version of whatever was working. But this is not a good example. So there's a lot of room, a lot of distance to be covered by some of these companies. Great apps leverage the unique features of the phone. The truly great mobile apps would make absolutely no sense running on your desktop, sitting in your office. So how do you do this? You have to leverage the accelerometer, the GPS, the instant-on features, the swiping, the ease of use. If you can do that, you can make a truly great mobile app. So think about this. You have coupons on your computer that you use, and that's pretty easy. But what would be better is a geo-based coupon. So it would be much more relevant to give you a coupon for the places you go or places you're nearby. That paradigm doesn't work on a desktop. So leveraging unique apps, features of the mobile phone is very important. The next thing is you have to understand the user and adapt to the user and not accept the user to adapt to you. Now, we've all been saying this in technology for a long time with user interface designs and other things. But does anybody here use Salesforce in part of their company? Okay, that application is one step above a 1980s mainframe application. It is horrific. It's basically ridiculous in the complexity and how it's set up. That is an example of how not to do user interface. When you go to mobile app, you got to get it in the way the person thinks about it. So if you travel, Trip, it's a great app because it laid out the trip in the order chronologically how you travel. And it gives you the high-level detail, and as you're moving through the phases of your trip, it gives you lower-level details, how to get from point A to B, how much time it's going to take, what are restaurants near this point of travel in your day. That's a great example of app. I believe we're going to hit an inflection point with mobile wallets when it's faster to pull your phone out and swipe it than it is to pull your wallet out, get the credit card, swipe it, have it fail in the reader, swipe it again, sign the card, get the receipt back. All that can be eliminated. And most phones, like Androids, you don't have to open up an app to use an app. That doesn't have to work that way. So I don't even have to open up an app to swipe it. I can just pull my phone out and swipe it. So I believe the big inflection point with mobile wallets will be when it's easier to use than credit cards. And credit cards aren't that great. They serve their purpose, but they haven't changed in decades. The same credit card I got when I was a kid works the same way as it does today. And that sounds great, but my needs have changed in 2 decades, and the credit card hasn't. So for example, if I'm at a place and I'm using my business Amex, and the people say, well, we don't take Amex, I pull out my personal Visa, there's no way for me to tag on my personal Visa that this is a business expense. So a year later when I'm doing taxes, I have to remember that one trip I used my personal Visa. With a mobile app, you can solve all those problems. You could just pop up a screen and say, what purpose was this for, and categorize it. Those kind of features will be available in mobile wallets that are not available in straight-up credit cards today, even in the pin and chip version of credit cards. The last thing is you have to put your measures in from the beginning. A couple of reasons for this. One, since you can't test on all the platforms, even if you do test on all the platforms, the next day they'll probably change. You have to know what people are using and what actions they're taking so you can go test after the fact to fix any bugs that occur with your system. The second thing is, this is so important that we now just wire this into all the apps we build. We don't even ask the customers anymore. This is just so critical to their app being successful. The third thing we do is, there's tools like Flurry that are like Google Analytics, and those are great. But what people really want to know is their app working? Is their business working? So let's say you're taking payments and you take 100 payments an hour. For the apps we build, if for some reason that 100 payments an hour went down to 10 payments an hour, in our support group, a little light would go off on a screen and say something's wrong. We don't know what's wrong, but their business is not behaving as usual. Most IT departments just monitor to see if the thing's up or down. They don't really know if it's working per se. So that's another feature that we put into all of our mobile apps. Now, I want to go back and say what I said before, because I think people are in a dangerous place right now. You cannot use today's current technology constraints to predict tomorrow's future technology. We build a lot of things at Amadeus that were considered impossible when the people came to us, and we break through those barriers. A lot of companies are going to work to break through this mobile wallet barrier, and they're going to get through it. If you start simple and stay simple, you take your user into consideration, you leverage the features of the mobile device, and you put the measures of success into the app from the beginning, combine that with a plan, and you can build a successful mobile app. So, Sterling, can you raise your hand? Sterling's here. I have this presentation of some flash jump drives and a more in-depth white paper about the experiences we've learned from working with other vendors for over the years. So you can ask myself for that, or Sterling will be available for that.